Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best.
Bellissima.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Tonight we look at the pro-Palestine march that took place in London. Or was it a pro-Hamas hate march? And could we be heading towards some form of religious war in our country? We'll look at today's COVID inquiry, which shows those at the very top of government had serious, very serious doubts about Boris Johnson's ability to lead the country during that crisis. And I'm a celebrity. Get me out of here. Well, it's all over the newspapers. Apparently, I'm going into the jungle for a month. Well, I'll tell you about my decision over the course of the next hour. But before all of that, let's get the news with Aaron Armstrong.
A very good evening to you. Let's get you up to date with the headlines. The Israeli Prime Minister says there will be no ceasefire in Gaza and that this is a time for war. Benjamin Netanyahu promised to stand against the forces of barbarism until victory is achieved, describing Hamas as part of an axis of evil being formed by Iran. He added even the most just wars have unintended civilian casualties. More than 8,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli bombing, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. And Mr Netanyahu's described October the 7th as a turning point.
Israel will not agree to a cessation of hostilities with Hamas after the horrific attacks of October 7th. Calls for a ceasefire are calls for Israel to surrender to Hamas, to surrender to terrorism, to surrender to barbarism. That will not happen.
Meanwhile, the Israeli government's also confirmed 14 British nationals were amongst those killed during the Hamas attacks on the 7th of October. 2 others are still missing, and they may still be hostages in Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel Defense Forces say a female soldier's been rescued. Private Ori Megadish was freed during a ground operation in Gaza and has been reunited with her family. Hamas has also posted a video of 3 hostages being held, asking for a Palestinian prisoner swap. Their relatives say the proof of life has given them hope. Here, the Home Secretary has described pro-Palestinian protests across the UK as hate marches. Earlier today, the government and the police held an emergency Cobra meeting to discuss the threat of terrorism linked to the Israel-Hamas conflict. The meeting follows a rise in anti-Semitic and Islamophobic incidents across the country since October the 7th. Conservative MP Paul Bistow has been told to leave his government job as a parliamentary private secretary at the Department for Science after urging Rishi Sunak to back a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. He is the first frontbench MP on either side of the House to be dismissed over calling for an end to hostilities. Downing Street says his comments aren't consistent with the principles of collective responsibility. The police officer charged with murder following the fatal shooting of Chris Kaba will be named publicly. The officer's name and date of birth will be made public on the 30th of January. A home address or any images of them cannot be published. Mr. Kaba died when he was shot through the windscreen of a car in southeast London last year. And Just Stop Oil activists who climbed a motorway gantry on the M25 have avoided jail. 2 protesters were handed suspended sentences after a High Court judge found organisers of the demonstration did not make them aware of the injunction, and no penalties were imposed against 10 other activists. The ruling comes after 62 Just Stop Oil protesters were arrested at a demonstration in London. Well, this is GB News, live across the UK. That's it for the moment. Now, it's back to Nigel.
Good evening. Well, last Saturday, once again, saw huge demonstrations taking place in London. Once again, the Palestinian flag was there for all to see. I've commented before that this is the politics of other countries now writ large on our streets. But I have to say, what did really surprise me in many ways and made me ask a question. By the way, that sign, Queer Jews for a Free Palestine, I mean, I wonder whether gay rights protesters understand actually what goes on in Gaza and many of those countries around there. It seems rather like turkeys praying for Christmas. Talking of prayer, this is what we saw on Saturday evening in Whitehall, outside number 10 Downing Street, and next to our cenotaph, our national monument to those that died in 2 world wars and since. I never thought I'd see these scenes in my country. Well, that is the Islamic call for prayer taking place outside 2 of our biggest and most important national symbols. And this is all because our political class decided, and if we go back to the 1997 general election, yep, it was Tony Blair, Alistair Campbell and Peter Mandelson who decided that they would rub the noses of the right in diversity. Mass immigration, diversity for the sake of it. And actually, Peter Mandelson was in the newspapers over the course of the weekend. He's going to be doing a big new podcast with the Times newspaper, How to Win an Election. Well, maybe, Peter Mandelson, what we should be asking you is how to ruin a country. Because the whole point, and those of us that were sceptical about immigration on this scale, is if you have that large a number of people that come, actually it becomes impossible to integrate into society. Something, by the way, that we had done better, I think, than all the other European countries until Blair came to power. Now, one person in government who did speak out, and she does this on quite a regular basis, is our Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, who, talking about those marches, those signs, much of what was being chanted on Saturday, as on previous Saturdays, has said, to my mind, there is only one way to describe those marches. They are hate marches. And what she means by that is that basically there are people there who are celebrating what happened in Israel, those awful events on the 7th of October. This has got to a point with Jeremy Corbyn being quite rightly I think, kicked out of the Labour Party, where I wondered, I've been speculating for the last couple of weeks, whether we would see an Islamic party. And indeed, an application went in to the Electoral Commission for the Party of Islam. It has been turned down by the Electoral Commission on the grounds that they haven't laid down the right form of governance. But I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't rule out a party like this existing at the next general election, and certainly at the one afterwards. And the impact of this is now being felt even on the Conservative Party, where Paul Bristow, in a very, very junior PPS position, MP Conservative for Peterborough, has told the Sun newspaper that he is standing down as a PPS. He says it was absolutely the right decision for the PM to fire me. I obviously regret being sacked, but I have many thousands of my constituents who feel very strongly about this issue, and I feel I can better represent their views from the backbenches than the government payroll. And, of course, what he means is that the centre of Peterborough has within it about 15% of the total constituency are people of Islamic faith, and there are many mosques in the centre of that town. So even in Peterborough, we see the effects of what I think is non-integration impacting on our politics. And then we saw the most astonishing events in Dagestan, in Russia, at the weekend, an aeroplane coming in from Tel Aviv and people storming the airport, basically looking to try and get their hands on Jewish people and lynch them. So it isn't just on the streets of London that we see things that we find disturbing. It's happening everywhere. It's happening in Paris, it's happening in Brussels, it's happening in Berlin, where the slogan of 1945 of never again seems to have been totally and utterly forgotten. And I just wonder, and maybe it is a very strong thought, but I just wonder, are we heading towards some form of religious war? Give me your thoughts. Farage@gbnews.com. Now, Charlie Peters, GB News' Investigates reporter, has some, I think, disturbing news of what some extremists have been preaching in mosques over the last few days.
Well, since I got back from Tel Aviv last week, Nigel, I've been looking at what's been going on in this country, how the war has been occurring in Britain. We've seen, as you said, much of this from those marches in central London, but there have been several very controversial sermons being given by imams across Britain, not just in London, as is going on throughout the country. On Friday night, we played a few clips of that investigation. It's stretching well past 20 mosques now across the country where we believe extremely controversial and charged language is being used. And tonight we have 4 more clips that we can share with your audience now.
OK.
Hamas is part of the Hukam of Palestine. Don't criticize them. Don't blame them. If you can't help this situation, shut up. Just be quiet.
We only do these events and halaqas and talks and speeches, which is something good, and this is khair, of course, and we have to do this. But the point is, we only do this when our enemy, when the criminal Jews, they escalate the aggression against our Muslim brothers and sisters in Palestine.
I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that the Jews will fight you and you will prevail over them. Then a rock will say, "O Muslim, here is a Jew behind me, kill him."
O brothers, O soldiers of the armies of the Muslim world, it is your duty to defend the Holy Land. It is a duty upon the Muslim leaders to fulfill the command of jihad. They must carry out military action. The armies of the Muslim countries, you must take on this military task and defend the Holy Land.
I can't imagine Charlie Peters, if a Church of England vicar said anything approaching this, that he or she would not be arrested within 24 hours.
Well, we've sent all the information we've collated to the counter-terrorism police and also the police forces in these local areas where we've heard these comments. In Swansea, criminal Jews, the term being used. They said that they're investigating. It was a visiting imam. In Leeds, we heard there, don't criticise Hamas. They also said that the coverage of the atrocities on October the 7th were lies. In Nottingham, quoting from a prophecy about killing Jews, they said it's just quoting scripture. Yeah. But we've heard from experts who say that that's deliberately inflammatory. And then also finally in Bradford, calling on Muslim armies to invade Israel. This reflects the mood in the street protests in Beirut, in Baghdad, but now it appears also in Bradford.
It does. Dr. Sheikh Ramsey from the Oxford Islamic Information Centre is a friend of this programme and a genuine peace-loving man. I have no doubt about that at all. And I've always enjoyed our conversation.
God bless you. Thank you.
But what we've just seen there, Dr. Ramsey, is disturbing in the extreme.
It is. I'm shocked. I'm very shocked, and I condemn all of them. Condemn all of them. It should not say it like that. What we need to do at this situation, what we need to do, of course, we see two cousins, the Palestine and Israel are cousins. The Muslim and the Jews are cousins, two cousins, which become hatred toward. In a holy book says, if two families, two good people, got it, just get involved and bring a peace between them. This is what they said. This is what we should try. This is what we should do. And I said again, I condemn these people. They should not say this. They should not say the jihad. They should not provoke the other young people or other to go and damage themselves, damage their family. They don't know what is happening when the prevent get you or the whatever getting you. If the family is in trouble, that in trouble is so much. And after that, say, oh God. They should not do these ones. Perhaps the police, as our honorable friend says, the police should get involved to see what they mean. Why the mosque seen such that things at all? It should not be in the mosque at all. I'm very surprised is coming in the mosque. However, what I would like to say, the ordinary Jews, as lovable people, today, this morning, I don't know if I should say or not, I was in the Nicky Campbell BBC, and we were talking after that. So one of the Jews from London, of course, phoned me, said, Sheikh, do you remember we hugged each other? Do you remember we hugged? Where is he going? I said, I'm brother, for God.
No, I know you are, but how? What is going wrong? Why are, we can't put a percentage figure on this of the mosques in the country where this sort of thing's being said. We hope it's low, but
I hope so.
But we don't actually fully know. What can be done within the religion to deal with these people?
I would think if the Imam says something like that in the congregation in the Friday prayer, he should go. He should go. It should not, especially in the Friday prayer, we pray to all. We bring the name of God. Not you kill the Jews, kill the. Why are you killing the Jews for? Why is a friend, is a brother? Why you want to do that? Why you want to provoke the people? They are friends, they are brothers, they are sisters, they are lovely people. They are so kind and so many of them so merciful. I know them. I know them from the United Nations. I know them from the Turkeys. I know them from the Jerusalem. I know them from the UK. I know the Rabbi Mervis. Mervis is a very close. I always said Rabbi Mervis. I'm saying it here as well. He's so kind and wise. He's in my Facebook. So and we met together.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine, Dr. Ramsey? If you were living in parts of North London where there's a big Jewish community, these people are scared to walk down the street.
Yes, I would love to give him a hug and say, Shalom, Shalom, listen, Shalom, Shalom Alaikum, Shalom Alaikum, Shalom Alaikum, Salam, Shalom, and take it easy. It passes. Just keep yourself, and it passes. I don't think, in Oxford, which I am, all coming from Saturday, says, Salam Sheikh, Shalom Sheikh, and says, Salam, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom. Because they're children coming and going, but they are safe. However, we do not want to make them worried. We love them. We do not. But we need to do, of course, we need to bring a peace and a ceasefire and a brotherhood in the Palestine and Israel, because I always said to the many big, the Israel love to have a
Well, the ceasefire itself, of course, is becoming very contentious because Israel has the right to defend itself, and it's a question in Gaza of where that goes. And I understand the difficulties of all of that. Clearly, what we also need is better integration of the communities. But as ever, your voice is very important. And I'll tell you why it's important. Because it's possibly too easy in a situation like this, where we see the scenes that have happened in London, where we listen to the report that Charlie Peters has given us, if we in our own minds think the entirety of the Muslim population in this country actually support this stuff, we're wrong. They don't. And that's why Sheikh Ramsey being here is important for us to understand that. It's very, very important. However, far too many do. Charlie Peters, final word from you. Are the police going to act?
Well, they surely must. We know that Greater Manchester Police are looking into an incident. We sent them, and we're waiting for further responses from others. The Charities Commission has confirmed that they are assessing the information we've provided to them, and it comes in the backdrop that Michael Gove, the Community Secretary, is considering a new definition of extremism and also a change to the terrorism law, which has not been updated since 2011. And witnessing the scenes and the commentary that we've seen over the last few weeks, it might well act soon.
All I can say to that is they need to act very, very soon indeed. In a minute, after the break, we go live to Tel Aviv. Well, thank you. That wasn't it.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, it's very difficult to find any good news about what is going on in Israel and Gaza at this moment in time. But GB News' security editor, Mark White, is there in Tel Aviv. And, Mark, I understand one little piece of good news before we start on the bigger picture is that one of the hostages has been rescued.
Yeah, you're right, Nigel. This is Corporal Ori Megadish, who was abducted by Hamas terrorists on October the 7th. When those attacks took place, she was taken into Gaza and has been held ever since. But an overnight operation by the Israeli Defense Forces managed to rescue her. She's been medically assessed and is in good condition, even to the point where she's been able to meet with members of her family. So clearly delight across Israel at that rare bit of good news. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, in his news conference this evening, thanked those members of the IDF who launched this rescue operation. And it gives him hope, and he says it should give the families of those hostages being held some hope that there is a chance that the IDF can secure the release of hostages going forward, because there's been real concern among the families of the hostages in Israel that actually the decision to launch this ground war, and that is what we're seeing, not on the scale that we thought, with tens of thousands of troops going over the border into Gaza with all of those tanks. It's on a bit of a smaller scale, but it's a ground war nonetheless. They're in Gaza and they're pushing forward incrementally, taking one bit at a time. But, you know, there was concern amongst these families that the start of this ground war could put their loved ones at risk. They wanted quite a few of the hostage families, understandably, to give more time to the negotiations. But that decision actually to launch the ground war was taken by the War Cabinet after they heard back from diplomats, Nigel, who had assessed that the talks between Qatar and Hamas terrorists had stalled, that Hamas was just playing for time to string this out as long as possible, and that's why they took that decision. It's a big risk, but at least the rescue of one hostage shows it can be done.
Well, it shows something can be done, Mark, but my fear that I expressed to you on Thursday was that as the death toll in Gaza mounts and begins in numerical terms to become several times bigger than the numbers of people that died in Israel on October the 7th, you know, I sense in the international community a slight softening of outright support for Israel. And I just wonder, do you think this is perhaps why it's not the all-out assault that we'd expected?
I think that's maybe part of the reason. Also, just how complex the way in which Hamas is embedded into Gaza right throughout the Strip, with hundreds of miles of tunnel systems that they still, even today, continue to fire their rockets at regular intervals from. They still have that capability that has not been degraded really to any significant degree, it seems, by the Israeli military. So that may also be behind the reason why it's more of an incremental approach. But I think you're right, Nigel, in terms of the images coming out of Gaza. I think Israel is alive to that as well, which is why they, at every opportunity, try to remember or try to get people to remember the terrorist attacks on the 7th of October. But we are seeing it already in countries around the world, and even in the UK and the US, there's a softening of the position. They were not for any kind of ceasefire for quite a few days. Now they're talking about humanitarian pauses, and some, including some MPs, are saying that they actually want a ceasefire.
No, they are absolutely. Mark White, great reporting from Tel Aviv as ever. Thank you. And I must say, I am struck. Whatever airstrikes the Israelis carry out in Gaza, ultimately, they're going to have to fight in those tunnels. War underground, very, very difficult indeed. Now, the COVID inquiry goes on week after week after week and doesn't, in my view, make as much news as it ought to, given they repeatedly locked us down and caused the country absolutely huge damage. But once the name Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, begins to appear more regularly in these hearings, and as some really big witnesses take the stand, the whole thing is beginning to change. Lisa Hartle is GB News' London reporter, has been there today, and it's been the turn today of Martin Reynolds, the former principal private secretary of Boris Johnson. He's been testifying today, and just to remind those that have forgotten, he was known as Party Marty, wasn't he, Lisa?
Yes, he was. So he was the one who sent an email out to Downing Street staff inviting them to a garden party, bring their own booze type of party. That was during lockdown in 2020. Today he was asked about that, to comment on that, and he said that he apologises unreservedly for any hurt and distress that may have caused and his part in it. And when asked whether he thinks that that had an impact on public trust in the government, he said yes, but less so than it would have done if the news broke when it happened. It actually broke 15 months later. He was also asked why he changed a WhatsApp group that he was in that was keeping the Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, updated on the pandemic to a disappearing message function. He said he couldn't remember why, but he could speculate, and he said that perhaps it was because he was worried that messages would be leaked to the press. Now, other messages that were discussed today were between Dominic Cummings, the Cabinet Secretary Simon Case, and former Communications Director Lee Kane. They were shown to the inquiry. In these, Simon Case accused Boris Johnson, when he was Prime Minister, of constantly changing his mind on decisions and said that he cannot lead and we cannot support him. Government isn't actually that hard, but this guy is making it impossible. Documents also showed former Chief Scientist Patrick Vallance that he said senior officials had tried to strong arm him and Chris Whitty into giving a press conference around the time that Dominic Cummings was found to have driven his car to Barnard Castle. And he said, commenting on that in these documents that were shown to the inquiry today, he said that this was he'd clearly broken the rules, and the press conference that Dominic Cummings gave after that news came out was a rambling car crash. And in his diary entry, he also called Boris Johnson weak and indecisive. Now, there was also a handwritten diary note that was shown to the inquiry today when another private secretary gave evidence to the inquiry. Imran Shafi, this was from a meeting between Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak in March 2020. It said, this is what he'd written, made a note of, we're killing the patient to tackle the tumour. Large people, that's taken to mean large numbers of people who will die. Why are we destroying the economy for people who will die soon anyway? And when asked about this, he said he couldn't remember definitely who said that, but he said he thinks it was Boris Johnson. Now, on all of this, Boris Johnson's spokesman has said that Boris Johnson is cooperating fully and will also give evidence to the inquiry. Now, today we were also supposed to hear from Lee Kane, who was the former Director of Communications, but due to timings running over with Martin Reynolds, we're due to hear from him tomorrow, along with Dominic Cummings.
Wow, that will be a big news event. Lisa, thank you very much indeed for that comprehensive report of what happened today. Now, I know some of you at home will be saying, so blooming what? We couldn't care less if Boris Johnson ate a piece of cake with a crowd of people, whether the gang in number 10, who were all working closely together, had a drinks party. It's all irrelevant. After all, didn't Keir Starmer have a beer and a curry up in the northeast of England? But I tell you what really matters, and what really matters from this inquiry, is how our government operated and functioned at a time of national crisis, a time when we've added 400 billion to our national debt, a time when we've let our National Health Service waiting list go up. It's now about 7.6 million. Decisions that were taken that ruined small businesses, and delays to screening in healthcare that mean many more people are going to die as a result of lockdowns than would ever have died of COVID. That, at least, is my opinion. And if it is true, if at the very centre of the decision-making of all of this, we had a Prime Minister and a close team who didn't know their own minds, whose opinions blew around in the breeze, according to what short-term opinion polls said, then there are bigger lessons we must learn about how our country should be governed, and perhaps governed rather better. In a moment, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. Will I do it or won't I? All of that in a couple of minutes.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows, Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Well, several times since 2016, I've had I'm a Celebrity Get Me Out of Here from ITV saying to me, come into the jungle. And they've always offered me really quite substantial sums of money to do so. And I've always thought, no, it's probably not the right thing for me to do. And they've been back on the phone this year. And you might have seen The Sun put me on the front page, mocked up as if I was there already. And the Mail are almost certain that I'm going to go. Unlike previous years, I am giving it very, very serious consideration. Why? Well, I tell you what, you've got about 10 million young people who watch that programme. These are people who don't really watch the news or read newspapers, but they still care about the country they live in and about their futures. And actually, in many ways, the futures of young people in Britain have been blighted. They haven't got the same opportunities that their parents and grandparents had, and they'd love to look for solutions. So in my mind, if I was to do it, I might be able to connect with that audience because, goodness me, they all watch I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. There are downsides to doing it as well. I haven't absolutely fully made my mind up. I'm running a poll as we speak on TikTok, asking people, do you think I should do it? Do you think I should not do it? But I am in talks contractually, and those talks have been going on for 2 or 3 days. There will be an absolute definitive answer within the next 48 hours. There we go. Now, Rupert Read was a co-founder of Extinction Rebellion and the Climate Majority Project. And Extinction has now been around for 5 years. But I don't know, whilst I'm deeply intolerant of much of their behaviour, and we see today that those that climbed up onto the bridges and effectively blocked the traffic on the M25 are walking away scot-free. I don't believe that to be right, but I sense something is happening. You know, when you ask people, are they worried about the climate, about the world, about the potential damage of climate change, they say yes. when you ask people, should we do it here in this country through the net zero policies and you pay for it, you start to get a very different answer. And politically, we're beginning to see, slowly but surely, a shift, finally, in the Conservative policy. Rupert, I wonder what you make of what I just said, in the sense that everyone's worried about the world they live in and what could happen to it. But when it comes to the implementation of net zero, there is a slight sense of realism, and that's the way I'd put it, creeping in. Do you see that actually the tide is turning a little bit about what we should do with this debate?
Well, I'd make a couple of points here, Nigel. The first one is that the Climate Majority Project, which I now run, having left Extinction Rebellion 3 years ago, the Climate Majority Project, we're trying to be much more broad-based than the movements such as Extinction Rebellion and other parts of the radical flank. We're trying to attract large amounts of support from across the spectrum. So, for example, we have major Tory grandees who are backing us, people like Lord Deben, formerly John Selwyn Gummer, and Lord Randall, who is Theresa May's environment advisor. What I'm getting at here is there are people in all parties, including very much in the Conservative Party, who are desperately concerned about the situation that we face and who are not moving away at all from commitment to achieving net zero and playing our part in that. And that's the second point I'd like to make, which is that I think it is essential that Britain plays its part in this process. Sometimes people say, oh, yes, but what about China? What about India? And yeah, of course, there are issues there. But the bottom line is this. We need to lead. We ought to show leadership. And I think that anyone who is patriotic will understand that where Britain leads, others often follow. And where Britain pulls out of something, well, that's bad news for the world. The world wants to see British leadership on this. They've been pleased to see British leadership on this up to this point. But the government's own climate change committee have now said Britain is no longer leading the world on this. And that's the situation that we in the Climate Majority Project would like to change.
Look, we can lead, but it doesn't mean that China, India, or Indonesia, or any of these countries will follow. And after all, they're going to burn 8 billion tonnes of coal this year. But there's another big point I want to discuss with you. And look, you and I disagree, but it's GB News, and we want to have a proper debate about this. What the ULEZ camera extensions put in place by Sadiq Khan have exposed is something that's been going on with electricity bills, for example, for years. And it's this. What we're doing in the name of net zero is actually taxing the poor disproportionately, and in some cases, not just exempting the rich, but making them richer. Do you understand why there's such public fury over that?
Well, let me ask you this, Nigel. Would you agree with me that actually, yes, the rich should pay more? So, for example, the rich should pay a lot more for flying, and the rich should pay higher rates of tax to cover the green changes that we all now want to make, the changes on climate and on nature. Would you agree with me on that?
Well, don't you see, I think we're getting to the absolute truth of what the Green Movement's about. It's actually more about left-wing politics. It's more about big state. It's more about high tax. It's more about control of the individual's life. And really, the environment is being used as a tool to achieve that.
No, that's not right at all. So firstly, you've got to choose, right? Either you say poor people need to pay, or you say rich people need to pay. If there's something to pay, someone's got to pay it, right? And there is stuff that has to be put in as an investment, which will be hugely rewarding in years to come. This is partly about economics, Nigel. You must know this, that Britain is lagging relative to many other countries now on the energies and industries of the future, such as obviously renewable energy. Now, that's a serious mistake. Also on house insulation, if we invest
but Rupert, hang on.
Right now, no, let me just
hang on. On wind,
now we're heating the sky. We're heating the sky. A third of houses in Britain have no loft insulation. That's just crazy. Everyone can see that.
Everybody wants cheaper energy bills. That's right. And having better insulated houses helps considerably. That's right. But it's the cost of energy that worries me. And you see, the wind energy firms are now saying they want government to pay them 70% more for their electricity. The point I'm making is that what we're doing in the name of renewable energy is we're producing intermittent, very expensive energy, and that disproportionately affects the poorest in society. That's the really big point I'm trying to make.
Look, what we need to do is ensure that the poorest have well-insulated homes. So we need a free program to be rolled out to all poor households to insulate those now. Now, somebody has to pay for that, but it's going to be massively beneficial for poor people. Many people this winter, right, are struggling to pay their bills, but they wouldn't be if their houses were better insulated. It really is a no-brainer. So I think that we can all see that there are easy win-wins here. And that's what we in the Climate Majority Project want to do here. We want to see, let's depolarize this debate, right? Let's take it into an area of common sense. Let's see what other things are that we can all agree on.
Rupert,
surely that's one.
If we can find areas that we agree on, we should do so. But we'll go on, for the moment, disagreeing in a civil manner. And I thank you again for joining us on the programme. Thank you. In a moment, I'm going to talk to an American friend of mine, Dennis Prager. He has managed to set up something called PragerU. It's like a university for young people to learn some truths about the world and to hear some conservative viewpoints. But is it just propaganda? I'll ask Dennis that in just a moment.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
This time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The dinosaur hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, he's done many things over his career, talk, radio, you name it, but Dennis Prager made a decision. We can't go on having our kids indoctrinated by left-wing progressives at school and university, and he decided to do something about it. And in 2009, he set up PragerU, Prager University. Dennis, why did you think you could set something up that would reach a large number of young American people?
Well, the truth is I wasn't sure. to be honest, I live in a state of self-pinching. If you would walk with me through an airport and see the number of young people who come over, it's very gratifying. I did not know what would happen, but I knew that I and others have very important things to say that they never hear. That's the key. They never hear this. There is so much that we deliver. For example, here's a simple example.
So for those that don't know, what?
Okay, so Prager University is a nonprofit, the term we use in America. We raise money, so everything is free. You don't have to pay for anything, and we have well over 1 billion views a year. And according to Google, 65% are under the age of 35. Yeah. So I'll just give a small example. The ignorance among young people, and I'm sure it's true here in Britain, I am sure of it, but I know of it in America, of the amount of evil in the 20th century. And this should have this should not be a right or left issue. 100 million people were killed, non-combatants, in the 20th century. They don't know that. The overwhelming majority of young Americans never heard of the Gulag Archipelago. 45% of young Americans never heard of Auschwitz. I mean, this is not a conservative poll. This was Pew Research, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Which is not conservative or liberal.
No, we quote them regularly. I mean, they're a good.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we bring this to their attention, and the left hates us for this.
So you do it through these sort of 4 or 5 minute informative, and I've done some work with you in the past on this about Brexit and what it meant. Yes. You do these informative videos,
all 5 minutes.
Yeah, and people watch them. But the problem is, Dennis, as you know, when you're arguing, small c conservative views, when you're arguing pro-Christian views, you're very reliant, aren't you, on YouTube, owned by Google? You're very reliant on Facebook or Meta, as it is. And you've fought some legal battles.
Yes. So they have, on occasion, put us on restricted lists, meaning that if you ban pornography or violence for your children, you can't see one of our videos. So you probably don't know this. This is worth my whole visit to Britain to share this with you. So I testified at the U.S. Senate a number of years ago on this very issue of Google censoring us. Google owns YouTube.
Yeah.
So Google sent a representative from San Francisco, and I came in from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. Senator Ted Cruz, God bless him, organized this. And he looked at the man from YouTube and said, I'm just curious, why did you put Mr. Prager's video on the 10 Commandments on the restricted list? The 10 Commandments. And with a straight face, the man said, because it mentions murder.
Oh, dear. Yes.
So I actually announced, people can watch this. It is on YouTube. My testimony in the U.S. Senate. I said, well, in light of that, we will reissue it as the 9 Commandments.
Is there... I mean, look, I've had problems. I've had some problems. Facebook in particular, Meta, I've had terrible problems with, and realising that, stuff is being shadow banned. And the same goes for you putting your adverts out, doesn't it, as well?
Yes, exactly. That's why what we are doing is encouraging people. For example, I have what's called the fireside chat. 310 have been done every single week. I didn't miss one during COVID, from my home to people all over the world. And we encourage people to watch it straight now at PragerU, because we don't know what YouTube will do or
So you try to bypass the social media
That's
providers.
Correct, yes.
And that's by having an app?
That's right, we do. There's a PragerU app for it. That's right.
I think that's...
But it's a tragedy. So this is the key thing, though. This is really, if I may say, of my own idea, important. Young people send in questions at my fireside chat from all over the world. And one young person said, Dennis, how do we know who's telling the truth? It's a very, very good question. Yeah. And put under the pressure of having to answer it at that moment, I actually developed an answer that everyone should hear. Those who censor are liars. That's the answer.
Yeah, no, I like that. No, I like that very, very much indeed. Is there some hope, Dennis, that with Elon Musk buying Twitter, they call it X now, but I still call it Twitter, and talking about free speech, is there some hope that that platform might offer a better future?
Oh, yes.
People with views like yours.
For everybody, yes. Musk is a very courageous man. And, you know, they keep saying, well, he allows hate on it. First of all, the word hate has been used simply as a left-wing way of censoring. If they censor, by definition, it's hate.
Yeah, no, I get it.
But secondly, yes, I would allow, if you hate Jews, I'm a Jew, you hate Jews, in America, we have a First Amendment, you are allowed to say, I hate Jews. You can't say kill them,
no.
but I would allow truly vile things to be said, because once you don't allow that, it's over.
And if they censor, they lie. I'm not going to forget that in a hurry. Now, look, you know, there are those that say, well, Prager, you know, it's all just right-wing propaganda funded by oil money.
That's what they say, and that proves they lie. We had a company of frackers, not an oil company. I don't know if we have ever had an oil company give us a nickel. That's 5 cents in America. They gave us a few $1 million. God bless them for it. They represent about, I don't know, 4 or 5% of all the money we have ever raised. They haven't given us in quite a number of years. But the fact that people in the fracking business gave us any money at any time means that The Guardian and others who lie for a living can say that we are right-wingers funded by oil companies.
OK, well, I thought I'd raise it because that is what they say.
I'm very happy. Yes, that is what they say.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
Dennis, the world's in a terrible state.
Correct.
The West is in decline.
Correct.
We're facing conflict, perhaps wars. Is Trump going to win next year?
I am a terrible guest whenever asked to predict the future. I never make predictions. I am preoccupied with only one thing in life. What should we do? What happens is unpredictable.
Yeah.
I know this. There is an existential threat that exists. There are really 2 existential threats in the world today.
Yeah.
And they are not climate change. As whatever the threat it is, it's not existential. There's an existential threat to the West coming from the left.
Yeah.
And there's an existential threat to Israel coming from much of the Islamic world. Those are the only 2 existential threats on Earth.
All right. Well, Dennis, I know you're going to keep fighting.
That's correct.
Great stuff. Jacob Rees-Mogg. It's rather good what he's doing, isn't it?
Oh, very good, very important, and so refreshing to hear it so boldly put. I love, as you do, the line that censorship is lying. That's a very powerful line.
I've stolen that.
We're both going to use it.
Jacob, what have we got coming up this evening?
There's a shocking story that I discovered last night, that if you want an internship with MI5 and you're white, you won't get one. So there is institutional racism.
You won't
get one. No. So 96.2% of my constituents are white. They cannot apply for an internship with our security services because they're white. And this seems to me to be the real definition of institutional racism.
Yes.
I think it's absolutely shocking and so discriminatory to the people I represent in North East Somerset. So that's what I'm going to be raising.
No, well, I think it's a very, very good point indeed. And extraordinary, isn't it? After 13 and a half years of Conservative government, this is where we've got ourselves to.
Quite depressing. I won't deny that.
No, I'm sure you won't.
This is happening with a Tory government and an excellent Home Secretary who is very tough.
Some very strong words coming from Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg in just a moment. I'm done for the day. I'll be back with you tomorrow, maybe closer to my big decision. But before all of that, let's have a look and see what the very wet weather has in store for us.
Good evening, it's Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. And whilst for many the unsettled theme continues through the next 24 hours, it's a drier but chillier picture for Scotland. And that's because of a brief ridge of high pressure which is quietening the weather down a little bit here. Meanwhile, the rest of the UK under the influence of a low pressure centred over Republic of Ireland. That's bringing then heavy showery rain to many parts of England, Wales and particularly eastern parts of Northern Ireland. Heavy rain building up here overnight, could be up to 100 100 millimetres perhaps, which is why some impacts are likely. Drier weather across parts of Scotland, a touch of frost likely here, milder further south, but with that a few patches of mist and fog are possible first thing on Tuesday morning. Tuesday then is going to be a changeable day with further showery rain across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England into Wales, a drier slot for a time before more wet and windy weather arrives from the southwest later on. Meanwhile, across Scotland, here it is looking mostly dry, plenty of sunshine too, but quite chilly. Temperatures struggling here in single digits, milder further south with highs of around 14 or 15 Celsius. If you're going trick-or-treating through Tuesday evening, watch out for a band of rain pushing its way up from the southwest, drier towards the north, but more unsettled weather is on the way this week as Storm Ciarán approaches, most affecting southern areas as we go through Wednesday night into Thursday, bringing some heavy rain, but it's the exceptionally strong winds, particularly around Channel coastal parts, which we're most concerned about.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you